Welcome back to the channel. You are dialoguing with Roscoe. Today, the dialogue is going to be centered around Miss Henrietta Pleasant, born August 1st, 1920 in Roanoke, Virginia. By the age of 2, her mother would pass away. Her and the rest of her siblings were sent to stay with different family members. Henrietta would end up with her grandfather in Clover, Virginia. There he raised her. While there, she worked on a tobacco farm. It wasn't uncommon for children to not attend school at that time because a lot had to stay home and help the families work. That's how they was able to make their money, eat, and take care of themselves to sustain. In 1941, she would meet her husband, David Lacks. After that, they would move to Baltimore, Maryland to look for better job opportunities. And they would have 5 children of their own. In 1951, Henrietta would begin to experience unbearable pain in her lower abdomen, and she also experienced unusual bleeding. So this led her to believe that something was seriously going wrong. Her husband took her to the hospital, that being Johns Hopkins Hospital at the time. They were one of the hospitals that treated Black patients. Upon her being in the hospital, she would get a full examination. They would find or discover a large tumor in her lower abdomen. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer. They began treatment with what's called radium. Radium was a form of radiation treatment that they began to use. During treatment, the doctors would remove 2 tissue samples from her cervix, one being a healthy sample and one being the cancerous sample. The cancerous cells would later become the famous HeLa cells. They got the name from the first 2 letters of her first name and the first 2 letters of her last name. Henrietta had experienced a very aggressive form of cancer. It spread rapidly all throughout her body, and her condition worsened month by month. So in the later part of 1951, she returned to the hospital in unbearable pain. And the doctors would tell her that she would be all right, that it was nothing to worry about. They even noted in her medical chart that she said she was feeling fine, which was an outright lie. 2 weeks later, she would return to the hospital and they would admit her. And this would be her final admission into the hospital. And she was in such a bad state at the time that the doctors noted in her chart not to do any more treatments, but only to prescribe pain medication just for comfort. See, these doctors, they knew something was special and unique about her cells. It was this reason why they administered treatment to Henrietta Lacks. You had a group of surgeons around, notably a Dr. Lawrence Warden and a Dr. Wesley Tyndall. Lawrence Warden would perform the procedure, and Dr. Wesley Tyndall would take these sampled cancerous cells and give them to the cancer research expert at Johns Hopkins Hospital. At this same time, the hospital and the labs were in major need of a steady supply of sample cells because the ones in their laboratories would continue to die. It was an obstacle with them growing cells, and no one knew the nutrients that were needed to keep the cells alive. And no one knew how to supply these cells. They would work and do research for years to come up with a culture medium, which is the liquid that feed the cells. And they would even evolve that research to experiment with plasma from different animals, special salts, and even umbilical cords. But none of these things really worked. None of these methods worked to produce the results that they was looking for. And they also faced a major challenge with contamination. And you know, contamination would ultimately destroy the cells. Now, when they got Henrietta Lacks HeLa cells and put them in a laboratory, her cells began to develop. They began to double. So within the first 24 hours, her cells had doubled. That was something they did without dying. And when the doctors noticed this, they said that her cells had an immortal cell line. The cancer research specialist, he believed the key to conquering cancer lied in Henrietta Lacks HeLa cells. Ironically, although her cells were cancerous, they exhibited characteristics of normal cells, meaning they communicated with each other, they divided, they created proteins, and they even created energy, just like normal cells. And what made them a satisfactory tool to use in their research was that her cells were susceptible to bacteria. So they tested them against bacteria, viruses, hormones, and different proteins. And in 1951, when they had the spike in the polio virus, they used the HeLa cells to create the polio vaccine. And not only that, they used her cells to further research with cancer treatment. They used her cells in chemotherapy treatment. And they would even use her cells in vitro fertilization. See, these doctors, they understood the importance that her cells would have in the medical field and the role that they would play. So they created a panel of 35 scientists out of Tuskegee University to create a condition that would produce these HeLa cells in mass production. And yes, they did come up with a way to produce the HeLa cells in mass production by the week. I'm talking about in the trillions. What I want to emphasize is this: the breakthrough in the research of viruses, bacteria, and cancers came from the cells in the DNA of a Black woman. A phenomenal discovery, an innovation of sorts that facilitated their research in this particular medical field with being able to go to the next level. Without her cells, that wouldn't have been possible. Not at that time as we know it. On October 4th, 1951, Henrietta Lacks would pass away from cervical cancer. What was disheartening was the fact that the doctors didn't care to comfort her. They didn't care to treat her anymore. What they were concerned with was getting as many cells from her as they could and to reproduce themselves in mass because they seen a profit down the line. They seen that if they were able to create viruses and vaccines and ultimately conquer cancer with these cells, the payment that would come to them, they feel was worth more than the life of saving or really properly treating this woman, or at least comforting her in her last days of agony. So as it would happen, years passed after she passed away, they would begin sending letters to her family, asking them for samples of their blood. See, they was greedy. They wanted to see if Henrietta Lacks's family blood had the same characteristics as hers did at that time. So when they sent all these family members these letters, they got to talking amongst themselves, and then they decided to investigate to see why would these doctors in the medical field keep sending us letters saying that they want to collect some of our DNA. And when they found out that the doctors had took their mothers and grandmothers' DNA back then, well, they found out that they were able to sue the medical field, because at that time, to take someone's cells and their DNA, you have to have permission. And Henrietta Lacks never consented nor gave them permission. Remember, I said they took the cells without her even knowing during treatment sessions. So her family fought with the medical system for years. They fought with them for years, and eventually they would be rewarded a nice large sum for the indiscretion of the medical field, because you don't just take nobody DNA and you done profited and made all these millions of dollars and they family don't get nothing. You know, that was wrong. And it was greed. That was the factor in that. It was greed. So as a result, today, her family is paid, and they even have say-so when treatment methods come up or when different researches are done. They are notified. They have a say-so in what happens with their mother and grandmother's cells today. To the brothers and sisters who tap into this page, I appreciate it, and this for y'all. I enjoy doing the research. I enjoy writing my report up and bringing the content to the camera to give you guys the knowledge and information of our African American people who are forgotten or whose contributions aren't actually noted like others may be. Thanks for the support. The comments I appreciate. And like I said, it's more to me bringing these figures to the forefront than doing it for Black History Month. You know, I do this, or I'm going to do this type of content year round, because it matters that I'm able to shed light on these people, because their accomplishments meant something. The struggles they went through, the setbacks, the times that they created the inventions or made the contributions that they made to American society. I know those times were rough for our people, dealing with discrimination and racism, you know, having obstacles to block them being successful. But yet, many still found the way to overcome them obstacles and to go ahead and create a legacy that was great in society. And their memory can't be done away with. But even though we don't hear about these people, this is where I come in at to do research and to bring these people to the forefront for my people right now. I appreciate the people who tap into the content, who check it out, and who give me good words of encouragement. Even if the critiquing isn't what I want to hear, I still take that for what it is too and see what I could do better, because just because something isn't told to me the way I want to hear it, it don't make it bad, because actually people are on the outside looking in and they might see something that I'm not able to see. Thanks for tuning in with me. More content like this will be on the way, and I'm gonna work harder to drop more content throughout the weeks. With that being said, this your boy Roscoe, and you've been dialoguing with Roscoe. Peace and blessings be to everybody, and power to the people.